the agenda that we have is really, really interesting. We'll do a brief introduction of what DICE is, then going through an overview of what circular economy community data means, and specifically the project that Anne and Lucy are running. That's part of DICE. Then going through the Freepool case study that we did in collaboration with Clement and Ed. Then do a brief overview of what ReLondon does, and then we'll jump into the discussion and Q&A at the end that I will be chairing. So yeah. First of all, so what is DICE? DICE is a UK research and innovation, engineering and physical science funded network plus. So we're a 3-year project. We're already halfway and until the end of 2027. 2.5 million. We engage with industry and policy partners. University of Exeter is the lead, but we have these other 9 universities as part of our team. And oh yeah, thanks, Lucy, the AI note taker. It's always someone. Oh, we know who owns it. Yeah, it's from one of our members. Great. So the 2 things that we look after is embedding and enabling circularity and sustainability within digital technologies, and this includes material science. And well, we are a network of networks, just as I was mentioning. We are, like in this Venn diagram, you can see circular economy is one of the areas that we focus on, but we also look into digital and ICT and material science and engineering. And probably from the side of digital and communication technologies is where all this data side might be quite interesting, but also material science and engineering do a lot of the work here. So we connect all these different areas and do this interdisciplinary research, and also translate it for people to actually understand what is the impact of it. That's actually kind of my role. Trying to understand what are the challenges and opportunities, and creating a 10-year roadmap for a digitally enabled circular economy. We do other things as well, such as capacity building and knowledge exchange. So we run this kind of events, online webinars in person as well, for people to actually know about what's happening in this space and how they can engage with each other. So a lot of what we do as well is that networking and outreach, so people can interconnect. The other side is that we also provide some flexible funding, which we actually closed our second opt-in call last week, and hopefully we'll have some news by the mid-June around that time. We already have funded 3 feasibility studies, which is great. And everything is underpinned by this inclusive community approach. We have several frameworks that we follow throughout our activities, and we always try to make it as inclusive as possible. In terms of what we do within DICE, we have 2 main areas, or we focus on deep dives, which at the moment, the first deep dive that we did was on data centers. The next one will be in advanced connectivity. We already published some of the results. I'm sure in a moment, Kate or Georgie will share the interesting insights that we published related to data centers. But the other side of things, where we focus more on enabling circularity with digital technologies, which actually is more related to the topic that we're discussing today, looks into creating reports such as related with circular business models, finance frameworks, and the one that we did on Freepool, which was a case study that we tried to also kind of showcase what other people are doing. So we've already published 2, and we're in the process of publishing a 3rd. So advanced clothing solutions in the NAIT will come. The NAIT will come along in a few weeks. And as well, we try to engage as much as we can with policymakers and also the consumer devices side of things. This is just with KPIs of the progress that we've had to date. A lot of different things aligned with our pillars of activity. looking into how we can engage with different people, creating publications that have to do with all different sectors, as well as interest groups, such as the Data Center Collaborative that we already have. We are engaging with the Digital Traceability Working Group as well. But this is, of course, not exclusive of other initiatives that are out there. And we're currently running a roadshow that's going to be in July 1st, which will have an informational at the end. And then, well, we also provide some funds that, as I mentioned, we already provided 3 feasibility studies, 50K each. And we're in the process of providing another 3 feasibility studies and 2 demonstrator calls, funding this. This is actually shown here. So we provided the feasibility studies, the demonstrator calls, and we also have still some knowledge exchange placements there that are smaller pods of 5K each that we can, if you're interested, please reach out to us. So what we're doing right now is also talking about one of the project that was funded as part of this UK Research and Innovation funding, which is DECIDE, co-creating equitable circular food systems through a digital hub, which is the Digital Equitable Circular Food Systems, that Lucy and Anne will be presenting some of the insights and giving an overview of what we mean by a community, circular economy with a community perspective. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Anne and Lucy to go through their presentation.
Thank you so much, Diego. Can you, yeah, okay, sorry. Great, I couldn't see that. I've got a quite slow connection, so I do apologize. Hi, everyone. So my name is Anne Tubelik, and I'm joined today with my colleague and co-PI on this project, Lucy McCarthy at Bristol, and I am based at the University of Nottingham. Just to be clear as well, this is not just the 2 of us on the project. We've got a pretty large interdisciplinary team. I think now counting, postdocs and the PhD students who are affiliated somehow to the project. We're about 15 of us, so it's a great big project. So today we'll talk to you about the kind of community and co-creation dimension of our project, which is called DECIDE, which stands for Digital Equitable Circular Food Systems. And if you could move on to the next slide, that'd be brilliant. So I won't give you a whole introduction to the entire project. Instead, I just wanted to highlight the underpinning assumptions of the DECIDE project. We've got, an overarching aim and some objectives, obviously, but I think it makes a lot of sense for us to talk about these assumptions specifically because the first 3 of them are really what we will be discussing in this presentation. So when we developed the proposal of DECIDE, we did it jointly with colleagues across disciplines at the university, but also with input from project partners based in the community, and also building on quite a long kind of embedding in the field and the food sector that Lucy and I have had over the last 13 years that we've been working together. So there are kind of 5 big assumptions underpinning the project. The first one is that circular food systems, they require systems level transformation rather than isolated technological interventions. And that's very much embedded in how we're approaching this work. 2, digital technologies can facilitate circular transitions, but we think that's only when they're designed collaboratively and contextually. So the context here matters, and the co-creation and collaboration also. 3, community actors' participation basically will enhance the effectiveness of any innovation or solution that we develop because it improves the relevance and the adoption, but primarily the equity of any solution that we can develop. 4th assumption is that ideally, if we're able to integrate environmental, economic, and social data within any solution that we propose and co-develop, we can improve circular decision making. And finally, as part of our project, we've got a very hands-on approach. And so one of the assumptions that we've been working with is that pilot experimentation and also broader dissemination and engagement with a range of actors can generate scalable change beyond the initial context. So these are our 5 key underpinning assumptions. And as I said, today we're really focusing on 1, 2, and 3. If you could go to the next slide, please. Right. So in light of that, I really want to focus on the idea of co-creation and what actually it means, particularly within kind of the topic or theme of this particular workshop. So co-creation, what does it really mean for data, right? And co-creating a circular food system, what is that and what does that mean? So from our kind of experience and engagement as part of this project, which is now kind of almost halfway through or a bit more than halfway through its timeline, what we've seen is that data concerns are quite implicit through the community needs that are expressed by our partners and the community actors that are involved in the project. And, you know, the challenges that are experienced by the community are essentially the consequences of a food system that does not value farmers, nature, or communities, and instead centers on the financial interest of large manufacturers and retailers. So what does that mean for data? Well, it means several things, and I just want to highlight 3 here. That one is that actually, when we attempt to co-create a different model, and here we talking about circularity for the purpose of this discussion, a different circular model for food systems with community actors, so co-creating with them, we need to be quite explicit in terms of power dynamics and take that into consideration up front, and so we need to have that in mind. 2 is that actually, rather than data, what has been really helpful and what is really helpful is the other dimension to power, which is trust. Actually, it's the fundamental underpinning of everything that we're doing, and kind of co-creating this project with our partners, and now the kind of digital solution. We feel that trust is the fundamental pillar upon which everything is going to rest. And then there's an importance of clarity, right? In terms of, so then if we kind of move from, trust to the real kind of question of data, then that means we need to be very, very clear if we're going to build these trustworthy relationship and trusted environment. So whose and what data are we talking about? To what end? Who owns that data? How will it be processed, shared, and stored? Are all very important to clarify with community partners. Thanks for moving straight away. So now, co-creation, what does it mean for a digitally enabled food system, right? This is right in the title. So we've been really mindful and that there has been a proliferation of digital solutions, particularly in the context in which we're working, which is food and agriculture. And, you're probably familiar with some of the digital platforms that have emerged over the last few years. Whether they're like direct kind of farmers to consumers marketplaces, or software solutions to try and reconnect different part of the supply chains and so on. So there's loads of digital solutions out there, and some of them aren't fit for purpose. So what that means for us is that we really need to think about what value the project can really add to the community. And again, it's about centering their needs, and whether actually a digital solution is perhaps not a direct building of a platform, but perhaps a hub of hubs, or kind of having principles to organize the digital element of our new model. It's also very easy, we feel, to be attracted to the idea of proposing another technical solution, but actually what that does is invisibilizing the root causes of community challenges, which I was alluding to in the previous slide around, the failures of the current food system. So we need to really keep that in mind as well. And so all that considered, we're trying to find a balance between like a defined trajectory, because obviously, we had to put a proposal together for this project. We put a team together. We need to have a trajectory. We need to know where we're going. But we also need to balance that with the fact that we're co-creating with a range of partners and stakeholders who have multiple needs. And there are multiple visions that coexist within our project, whether it's with our community partners or even within the team. So the next few slides, and I won't talk about them so much, I will just show you. These are largely visual representations of what our team members envisioned as the ideal hub or digital hub that will come out of our project. So that's you can just simply flick through the slides. Diego, maybe letting people take them in for a few seconds each.
It's quite interesting. I didn't know about haikus, so it's really nice. With ratings, we've been talking about this eco-labeling and things like that, which is great to see.
As you can see, there are many representations of the hub, as many as members of the team.
Yeah, some more text heavy, but others.
Some are more text heavy, some are very diagrammatic, some are, quite poetic. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's it. Thank you so much. And yeah, we welcome reflections, questions, and if Lucy, you would like to add anything I've missed, because I probably have.
I think you did an absolutely amazing job, but I think it's really nice because I guess starting with the assumptions and then presenting them so you can, should have a quiz of which discipline do you think each conceptualization comes from, but how rooted we all are and how we see the world. That we're really seeing this as a socio-technical concern rather than a technical one. So maybe reframing the starting point slightly. But yes, very happy to discuss further.
Yeah. I think Marcia, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I had my hand raised, so I find it really interesting. I'm working also with participatory approaches and systemic design. So are you using any specific methodology for creating those visualizations?
So the visualizations that are like that you saw, that was from the team, and that's a piece of work that Lucy led with a colleague. So Lucy, do you want to?
Yeah, I just remembered that that's where it came from. Yes, Marcia, we gave them a series of prompts. So, just things to reflect on. And you'll see some of them thought about, what will this look like in the next kind of year, or what do we think would happen? So we gave a bit of a time boundary as well to it, but kept the instruction kind of as loose as possible, so that people could be creative, but very much focused on what will the hub look like for you? What is it you're imagining? And the discussion was fantastic because we thought we had an alignment, and then we saw these multiple representations, which then prompted, a follow-on workshop and other conversations. But that was within the project. And then Anne has been leading the kind of, doing this outside of the project. And I guess we see this similar kind of incongruences in people's perceptions. But we've been lucky that we actually have some of the farming community as our project partners, as paid for partners. So the engagement has been and really improved by that, we think.
Great, because we are using a similar methodology. We're using giga mapping and something that's called mini mapping as a first stage of giga mapping. So we did that with our team as well. So they mini mapped and we did a one-to-one sessions where I help people do the map. I have a design background. And then we now pull everything together as one large giga map, and we're going to use that as the basis for bringing more information from the stakeholders now.
That is super. That's lovely to hear,
Yeah.
Marcia. And then you might be, as a designer, you might know, but we're doing also a method called cultural
we're quite a
probes.
way past that. So I'll get back in touch with the guys from Aptopop because we wanted to
just joined.
That's all right.
That's
So
in
yeah,
here too.
we're doing a method called deploying a method called cultural probes
Yes.
with one of our colleagues as well. So it's going to be really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Amazing. I know you have your hand up, Mark, but just in the interest of time, and maybe you can write your question in the chat, and we'll come back afterwards just to go to the next presentation. So here we have the Freegle case study, Community in Action, with Ed Hibbert and Dr. Clement Lee. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, away we go. So this is a double header between me and Clement, so I'm going to keep it quite zippy. I'm Edward, Freegle's CTO, been around in this world for a while. So I'll give a spin through what Freegle is and the background to the problems, then I'll hand over to Clement for some more geeky discussion of statistics and data, and then maybe back to me about the impact that that's had on our platform and what we're planning to do next. So if you can skip ahead. So what are we? We're an online reuse platform. We help people who've got stuff they don't need connect with people who need stuff they don't have. So we don't have vans pottering around the countryside or like a charity shop. We're a kind of connection website that people can upload photos of what they've got or what they're looking for. People message you and you reply. You choose somebody, they come around, they take away whatever it is. They're happy because they've got a free thing. You're happy because you've got rid of something you wanted to get out of your flat or whatever. So all of it's free and all of it has to be legal. So there's some stuff that we don't take. And next slide. So we've been going for quite a while now, since about 2009 in the current form. And, you know, we're not Facebook, but we've got a decent kind of scale. And we're not eBay. Actually, eBay is probably the biggest reuse activity in this kind of space in the UK. But yeah, we've been going for quite a bit. If you move on. So the way in which we think about geography and place has evolved a lot over this time. And so this is a quick history, if you skip forward. When we started, people just set up communities with a name, and the onus was on the users to decide which community am I supposed to join? Oh, damn, I've joined the wrong one. I've posted to the wrong one. What does this area cover? All that kind of thing. Wildly different sizes across different areas of the country, particularly in urban areas. You have lots of small communities because there are a lot of people. Some of it's just historical legacy, some of it's council areas, organic growth, kind of good coverage overall, but a bit of a mess really if you look at this map. Scroll on, next slide. So later on, we tried to simplify this for the users by saying, well, what do you know? You know your postcode, or even if you don't know your postcode, you know that you ought to know your postcode. So that's kind of a good starting point for where somebody actually is. And just pause a sec. And that enables us to work out which of our communities somebody should be a member of, and then decide what posts to show them or to email out to them. And that helped a lot, really, in eliminating quite a lot of user confusion. But, next slide, it still leaves us with some issues. And apologies to people from Bristol on this call. But there's a thing that I internally call the Bristol problem, not because Bristol is intrinsically problematic, but a lot of online tech sites like this use a sort of point and radius approach to distance. And if you think about somewhere like Bristol, that just doesn't work because it doesn't take very many miles before your circle around a point includes parts of Wales, which would take quite a long time to actually get to if you were trying to travel there. And so the whole problem for us of trying to work out which posts to show people to, what area is relevant, that's quite of a hard problem, and there are issues with community boundaries as well. So next slide. So we got a bit cleverer a few years ago and came across this concept of isochrones, which is a geeky geographical term for a kind of polygon that defines where you can reach from starting in a particular place, traveling by a particular mode of transport within a certain time. So that takes account of geographical barriers, transport links, that kind of stuff. It's quite a useful concept, and there are now services that enable you to calculate those. And we've shifted towards that. That really helps, but it still leaves us with quite a lot of issues to address, which is, are our communities correct? I mean, they've evolved over time, but the boundaries might not be good. But also other things like, we started off thinking, well, the more replies you get, the better, right? That means the better the system's working. But actually, maybe you're overloaded. And if you get 50 replies to something, 49 people are going to be disappointed because they're not going to get the item they replied to. So maybe that's not the best approach. And we know that bumping a post, showing it again, definitely helps in getting that post taken and getting the item reused. But it does mean that while the new person who takes it has just seen it for the first time, other people have maybe seen it for lots of times and got quite annoyed. So there's a whole bunch of problems, a lot of them geospatial. And if you click onto the next slide, this is where we decided we needed some proper professional help from a statistician who knew what they were doing. And that's Clement. Over to you.
Thank you, Edward. Yeah, so this is the official title of the project. Next slide, please. So this project was funded by the International Center for Mathematical Sciences. So they fund projects in a similar way that DICE funds the projects, and they've also got these like knowledge exchange placements. And this is how I collaborate with Edward last year on this particular geospatial problem. So what you're looking at is the data, and the left on the left you see there's like a zoom in version of the exchanges that happened within the community, and on the right is pretty much the same map as you have seen a few slides back. What you can see is that the exchanges are not limited to one community, because yeah, a user can join multiple communities, and they are not like only like limited to a community. Like they usually will just look for people around nearby, without thinking, oh, I'm in this group, so I have to like only yeah, exchange with somebody in this group. So when I look at this data, at first I thought like, okay, we'll just use some traditional statistical methods or like machine learning methods. So for example, you can try to like explain the probability of a successful exchange using the distance between the two users, the number of messages they have communicate, etc. But that's not very useful for Freego's operations. Or we can try some clustering algorithms. But clustering basically put users into different groups or communities, and Freego's already got those communities. So that's not very useful if we go for these like nice traditional models. Ultimately, what Freego wants is to move away from the community model when it comes to advertising the items. So the question that Edward asked is, what is the typical distance a user travels for an item? And I coined this as what I call a relevance neighborhood. And the concept is quite simple. So for example, here you see a small circle here. And if you look at the average distance of the exchanges that involve users within this circle, then you can see that the average distance is greater than the radius. Next slide, please. On the other hand, if you draw a circle that is too large, then you have the average distance of the exchanges being smaller than the radius of the circle. And using a Goldilocks principle, we are almost always we can almost always find a circle where the average distance of the exchanges is the same as the radius. So it makes the optimization task quite easy. You just start with a small circle, and then you just expand it until this equality is achieved. And once we've got this idea, we create an interactive application that shows that, okay, this circle definitely like varies across different places across the country. But yeah, so that's sort of like the first version that we've developed. But obviously that it is very using the circles makes things easy to calculate. But ultimately, if we want to make it more realistic, then we'll have to resort to the isochrone concept that Edward has introduced. So this leads back to Edward.
Yeah. Thank you. We have 1 minute.
Yeah, okay, so very quickly, so this whole investigation of the data has reframed how we think about the platform, really. The job of the platform is not to mail bomb and spam people with offers, it's to work out who to show things to at the right time. And next slide, if you just click on that while I talk. So the idea here that we will be evolving is trying to start off showing things to people who are local and then gradually expand over time as we decide whether or not we've got enough replies. And that is a complex area and a complex problem that we'll be working on some more in the future. And then if you skip forward, still leaves us with lots of problems. I mean, the last thing I just showed you, maybe that ends up just giving affluent, expensive items to people who already live in the affluent area that the item is in. So you need to work out how to make that fair. Lots of data problems. And the overarching thing here that I've kind of learned is that just because you're a nice cuddly charity doesn't mean you shouldn't look hard at your data in the same way that you would if you're a commercial organization with a viable business model. And it's been really useful to have professional stats expertise to help us do that. And that's us. Obviously happy to take questions if people have got stuff.
Amazing, thank you, Ed and Clement. Yeah, we don't have any questions right now in the chat, but yes, feel free to post them. And if not, we can take them as well at the end. But in the interest of time, I'll stop sharing and give some the opportunity for Pauline to come from London. Pauline, if you can share your slides.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, thank you. Hi everyone. I'm Pauline from London. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Good. Great to be here. For those who don't know London, we are the London Agency for Circular Economy. So we are a partnership between the Mayor of London and all the London boroughs. And we work very closely with local businesses, local community groups, the boroughs themselves to help deliver circular economy in London. I only have 5 minutes here, so I'm not going to drill down too much into the detailed work we've done around data, but I wanted to prompt the discussion for the panel discussion later and try to prompt discussions and thoughts about what does happen if we don't build the data systems around the needs of local communities and businesses. And to do that, I'm going to try to do a metaphor using pasta. So please bear with me for the following 5 minutes, and I hope it will make sense. So if you're a researcher or an engineer, and I'm an engineer by background, so for the interest of full disclosure. So if you think about data system, usually you will come up with something like this kind of spaghetti cathedral, perfect data system. You want perfect transparency of information. For a circular economy, that usually means you want to know where all materials are, what they are, like all the time. And you want to know who can use it, who wants it, and who don't want it anymore. And you want some form of system to optimize it all. So that's your kind of spaghetti cathedral. And each spaghetti is a piece of data. But in reality, what you have in the real world is a bit something like this. So you have pockets of data that are all in different formats. So you don't have like dry spaghetti, you have spaghetti, penne. They're all, most of the time, proprietary information that have commercial sensitivity. So the businesses who hold them, they love to put their kind of own sauce and mix to sell their products and services. And you also have like big data gaps. So you have data or pasta that is not even there to build your cathedral. The other thing to consider, coming back to your spaghetti cathedral, is that what people actually need is not the cathedral. What they need is to eat. So in practice, that means they want to access the stuff they need, the products they need at the moment they need, or they want to an easy way to dispose of their stuff they don't want anymore. And the issue is that if you only give them the beautiful kind of spaghetti cathedral, full disclosure, this is all AI generated images. And I didn't spend too much time kind of refining the model, but anyway, so you might look a bit like this if you don't manage all the kind of systemic barriers or all the kind of system change you need to change behaviors in the first place. So in terms of, there is this useful behavioral framework called COMBI, which is all about saying to act and behave in a certain way, you need the capabilities. So you need the knowledge and skills, you need the opportunities, you need the tools, logistics, and that's usually what data comes in. And you also need the motivation. So coming back to the kind of spaghetti cathedral metaphor, if you don't have the right pan, if you don't know how to cook, or if you're not hungry, well, you're not gonna use the data and you're not gonna use your beautiful cathedral. So I'm not saying that this is not needed. This is definitely needed, this kind of theoretical research, system design. It's true for data, it's true for behavioral science, economics, engineering, to understand, model, evaluate. But what you really need to have, and that has been said before, is these collaborations with local citizens, business policymakers that have the data and that will need to use it. So they need to be there to implement, test, scale, and you need to co-design the system, and you also need to co-implement it. So it's a lot of iteration. It's not the pasta cathedral going to them. It's really like a joint design and implementation. And that's what we love doing at ReLondon. So I'm not going to say more about that, but we've done lots of research with on those issues, from construction materials to textiles and foods. And I would love to tell you more during the panel session.
Amazing. I love the spaghetti structure. Remind me of when I did a bridge with spaghetti just to try to structural analysis and all that. I'm also an engineer, so love that. Amazing. Thank you, Pauline. That was a very interesting presentation of the needs of people. I do think that technology should be in service of people, and that's a really good way of putting it in terms of what are the basic needs. If you go to this Maslow pyramid approach, sometimes you need to eat more than other things. So that's great. Just passing on to the panel discussion. Had already discussed some questions for you, but we normally hear now, especially in this modern era, that data is kind of like the new oil. But when we come to circular economy, it's more like this shared resources that we have, or a shared map of what we're trying to do. You mentioned some of this issues about cultural things or co-designing, just coming back to that word that also Anne and Lucy used. So these are very much social or cultural in a way, rather than technical. So this is something that it's difficult to know, especially if communities don't actually share their data, or businesses as well. And how could you actually enable them to share the data openly, especially now with the AI context? I'm open to anyone that wants to
I can dive. Yeah, I can dive in. I mean, there's a couple of different things there. So culturally, one of the issues I think is that a lot of businesses or organizations or movements in this area, they're not driven by technical geeky data interest. They're driven by a cause, and that's what they're thinking about all the time: the human connections, the cause. And that means that actually culturally within those organizations, potentially that kind of data stuff doesn't have a very high status in a way, and isn't necessarily collected. Like I've got a friend who repairs old teddy bears for people. It's a fantastic thing to do. She's not interested in weighing those teddy bears. Right? So you've got cultural issues around that, because the thing that motivates people is not that. some of these things.
Yeah, Mark, you wanted to say something.
Yes, when you mentioned how do we share data, we've been looking at this problem in advanced manufacturing, specifically in composites, and we've done a feasibility study across the industry. And we've echoed some of the same issues, so fragmented data capture, traceability and QA, and then for us, security and selective sharing of the data, and how do we extract more value out of the life cycle. And what we've been looking at, without solutioning, but in order to give you the data without trying to build a very top-down cathedral-based, takes 200 years, but is perfect model, we're looking at digital passports for the data. So we're prototyping, manufacturing digital passports, which gives you the data and context, but then allows you to look at the data from any angle that you want to, rather than a prescribed angle. So we're looking at that as a way to handle the data. I'll stop talking now.
Yeah, I know that's really helpful. Yeah, kind of like creating accessibility. And we were discussing, in the preparation for this panel discussion about how to create those digital common grounds and being as inclusive as possible. Because right now, a lot of the communities and sometimes when you work with more socially more oriented initiatives, you deal with a lot of that digital exclusion, and that's something that people are also fearing of sharing their data between. Either is it because of a data privacy issue or competitive advantage. How should we incentivize this? Is this something that you come across? I know, Colleen, in London.
Yeah, maybe I can comment on this one, maybe taking the example of something we've done in the construction space. And maybe this one is more about like business data, because you have lots of platforms or material passport or reuse platforms for basically connecting donors or like demolition projects to new development, to new buildings, and try to match the kind of demand and offer. The challenge, and they all, each individual kind of business doing that is amazing. They know their customers, they want to serve them. At system level, the challenge we have is that this is a fragmented market. So, and it's difficult in a system where really to reach economies of scale and to reach something that is usable, you need integration. So I think there is something about, and you kind of have two ways. You have the regulatory way, where you kind of force those businesses or like commercial developers, for example, to share data, which is like partly the case. For example, in London, they need to submit pre-demolition audits, bill of materials. So we're exploring ways that we can share data that is non-commercially sensitive, that can be used to develop that kind of matchmaking platform. And then the individual businesses can enhance the data, have like enhanced service. So that's one way, the regulatory path. I guess the other path is to bring, I guess, the clients, the users together, so that they can force, again, like having some form of data sharing, so that those businesses, they don't compete on data, but they compete on service. But that's a whole kind of development that needs to be done.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, that kind of like level of granularity, we hear a lot about that, but actually developing those things is you have to develop the rules, or someone has to have visibility at some point. Mohammed, you have a question there. You want to come in and comment?
Yeah, it's actually a follow-up question to the discussion that have been going. First of all, I would like to thank for this insightful information and presentations. So my question actually is, you highlighted that the incentive to share the data between businesses, but how did you handle, for example, I want to share, but I want to keep my IP and know-how to some extent. my question is like, okay, but if I share some data that doesn't have enough context, it will not be useful. I'm talking here from operational perspective. For let's say, for example, if you are a manufacturer or something like that, you want to share some data for at the end of the life cycle of the product, and some technical data that with the context will be helpful for extracting the usefulness of recycling, repurposing, and so on and so forth. How did you come across this question, or how did you approach it, if so?
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed.
So I've come across an analogy to this. It's not an active solution yet. So there's a thing called Open Safely that is in the health world, where the idea really is that you don't share your data. What you do is you allow people to do research on your data in a way that their research effectively queries your data and gets back information, but they don't see the data. And this is something which in the health world is quite important because of confidentiality, but in any area it's important because your data is in some ways your USP and your asset now. So you kind of might culturally want to share the data, but actually giving away your data has legal issues and may cost you. So there's something that we've been thinking about, but not got as far as actually producing yet, is having this kind of setup, and it sounds almost impossible, but where your data is not given away, but other people can benefit from that data. And that's that has some legs, I think, because otherwise everybody's in an island where their data is valuable to their business. They don't want to give it away, and it would cost them money to actually collaborate with people to do so. And therefore they don't benefit from the data that other people have either. And it's a significant issue.
Can I say something here? Yeah, I think that's a good point, but I think this would solve, I mean, instead of transferring the data, we could transfer the model. And there is a lot of work that have been established in the literature, especially in what have been called, federated learning, where you don't transfer your data. We transfer the vector or the model to your your local model, and then this will be updated with your data and then return back to the, let's say, the central model. There is different approaches, but that solves some of the learning that comes from the data that we don't need traceability or accountability behind it. But imagine that if I want a model that give me, not just an insight or reasoning, but I need the model also to justify in a traceable way that I could trust, because let's say if you are working in aerospace or something that it should have accountability. As a human, I will not sign something from a decision model that I don't have feasibility of behind that decision, if that makes sense. So
and that's a particular problem in the AI world, right? Because you might get people who are prepared to share their model, and you might have a system where people can incrementally train a model on different data without giving away their data. But then you end up with a model which might be useful, but it has no traceability. And you've got no comeback if that model crashes your business. So very difficult issues there.
Yeah, completely. I agree. I was just reading about how right now data is everywhere, and humans don't have the capability anymore. So we rely on AI to do that, but actually we're losing kind of like that connection between people and what it actually means. And giving that data away is kind of like losing that sense of community as well. So how do we bring, just before you go, and because I just read your note, how do we bring those people that are being marginalized in this all digitalization of different strategies? How do we bring them along so they can like be knowledgeable about the things that they're using, but also get benefits from it?
I'm happy to kick us off, Anne, if you like. Yeah. I think that the first question is, do they want to be a part of it? Why would they? What is in it for them? Listen to their concerns. And that there's a kind of a double bind of, marginalized communities are traditionally marginalized, therefore hard to access. So I think that work is incumbent upon us and organizations to consider, who are we excluding? What are the power dynamics that are at play here? What's the actual development you're even proposing? And is it desirable? So I think there's multiple questions before you even get to that. And I think, again, there is a huge amount of research out there already that surfaces why certain groups are marginalized and how, and that there are mechanisms to address those power dynamics, but that we run the risk with AI and technological interventions of creating more top-down, more exclusionary, more power-laden solutions that really don't serve anybody but those who are already benefiting.
Yeah, of course. Pauline, you want to say
Yeah,
something?
well, I definitely agree on this point that you need to start, without the data question, you need to start with what they really need. And I guess the other point is, from experience, usually the solution is not
Makes sense.
data, is not digital platform. So, for example, we've done project at London where we wanted to work with businesses on the high streets to help them reduce their waste and get the kind of cost and commercial benefits from implementing circular models within their business. And actually, I think the best kind of recruitment mechanisms for that program was just to do door to door. Go there, understand what they need. If they don't need, what we wanted to offer them, that's fine. But sometimes, they actually understand what they, like things that they manage day to day. They really understand that. So yeah, start from where people are, what they really need, and sometimes digital solutions are not the solution, and usually they're not, like connections and relationships are.
Yeah, completely. It is difficult because you're surveying them. You need that data when you live in a big community. But how do you bring those voices to be heard, and maintain that information so it's useful for the next iterations, as you say. At some point, you always come to that issue about data. And I'm not talking about digital, but how do you bring those people together? And not everyone can access sometimes those discussions. And it's always difficult to do that. I don't know if it's a matter of size, volume, or what do we mean by that? Looking into local communities, how do those local communities thrive? Ed, you wanted to mention something.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Firstly, I definitely agree that, the people who it is what it's about fundamentally don't really care about data mostly. They may have some concerns about privacy, but what they care is about trust, about whether or not they trust the organization that they're engaging with. What is it that you're doing that builds that trust? But there is a tension here in that if you're an organization that tries to do that kind of work, that might be how you're relating to the real people in the real world, but your funders want an impact statement. And your impact statement for stuff like circular economy and reuse is going to be in terms of CO2 and value and weight, and not about happiness or urgency or stories or connection, because that is a thing that is really hard to put a number on. And that's a constant struggle, because the bottom line for many organizations, and mine is one of them, is that you need a certain amount of money to keep going. And if you're going to get that money, you have to provide some kind of impact statement in what feels like to you the wrong format, because it's about the wrong things. Right? But there's no good way of measuring the data about just how important getting a carpet was to somebody who'd been homeless and moved into a flat with bare floorboards, right? How do you put a number on that? But you have to if you're going to fund an organization that actually achieves that. It's a really difficult problem.
Yeah, completely. I agree in that sharing space and how does that impact, at the end, even if the communities keep to themselves, they might always impact if they do something that impacts the environment or socially. It's difficult. You never are like not connected at all. Just I know we're almost at time. It's been a great conversation. I just wanted to leave with a little bit of thinking about the next 5-10 years. especially in the UK, how does a UK neighborhood could look like if we thrive or we increase this kind of co-creation, community initiatives? What would be something that you would focus on if there's something that you'd like to say, just a quick takeaway? Yeah, Ed.
Physical infrastructure for reuse. Think about the amount of physical infrastructure there is in an environment for throwing stuff away. And then think, apart from charity shops and the occasional shop at a tip, how much physical infrastructure there is to make it easy to reuse things. There's almost none.
Yeah, completely agree. Clement, what about you?
I think you have to give the users the incentive. Otherwise, like there's not much for them to do. Like I think that's a huge problem. Right now is like they need to jump through a lot of hoops in order to do something that contributes to the circular economy. So I think that needs to be lowered.
Aligning incentives. Pauline?
Yeah, I guess reuse infrastructure, I would definitely back this one up, because you need for kind of circular behaviors to be as easy as just going to your nearby shop, and so you potentially people don't have to know about those things. But I will add on top of this still that I think there is something to be done with voluntary kind of sectors, and there are like so many local community groups that are doing fantastic work, on most of the time not necessarily on circular economy, but tackling those kind of unmeasurable kind of metrics. So I think maybe it's about shouting about the stuff that some of them do well in the circular economy and just inspiring others to do something. So like similar things like repair cafes, local community groups. It doesn't prevent, we need that kind of reuse, more structured things behind the scene, but having this kind of cultural norm and like using the fantastic kind of community energy, I think is another parallel path.
Great. And finally, Lucy.
Yeah, I can only build on what Edward and Pauline have said, but also there's an Irish word, mehel, and it means, community spirit. So to work together towards those things, but it's that personal connection that I think it needs to be kind of front-ended here and then supported by the infrastructure to enable that as well. So that kind of interplay is absolutely key.
Great. Yeah, I think at the end we don't need to forget that we're people that we're dealing with, and of course we have that impact, and that's a lot of power there. And now we're at time. I just want to thank everyone for their time. If Mohammed, I don't know if there's a specific question that you might have, but you can maybe put it there or just put it out there. If someone can answer it at the end, we'll make sure to do that. But yeah, thank you so much for coming along, and we'll be by the way, just before I go, I just shared my screen on the next event that we'll have. So we're gonna host our next event on July 1st. So that's gonna be our annual roadshow. It went all the way back. Cool. So our annual roadshow will be in the 1st of July. It's going to be the DISE Network Transformation Pathways in the Science Museum. If you're interested, you can fill an expression of interest. We'll, of course, circulate the slides, and of course, sign up to our newsletter, connect with us on LinkedIn, and follow our work on our website. And thank you so much. So